This is the Stockwell Eldridge Show, giving you the real-time information you need to make educated decisions about buying and selling in the world-renowned Twin Cities. Now your hosts and real estate experts, Jason Stockwell and Dawn Eldridge.
Good morning, Twin Cities. This is Stephanie Havel with Wells Fargo Home Mortgage, and I've taken over for Jason Stockwell and Dawn Eldridge with RE/MAX results. So, and I have a guest in studio with me today as well, Jeff Peterson with Commercial Partners, and he's going to be talking 1031 exchange, or him and I are going to be talking about it today. And so I'm going to, we kind of usually start out, we talk about a market update or what's going on. Obviously, it's a real estate show and mortgage show. So I'm actually really excited because I could probably talk the whole hour, but I won't, about Wells Fargo's new program. It's called Your First Mortgage, and it is an amazing product. It's exclusive to Wells Fargo. It's a 3% down conventional product, and it's the first of its kind on the market, so we're really excited about it. You've probably heard some publicity and news about it. So those of you that are in the market for a new home, you don't have to be a first-time home buyer to use this product, which is great. So make sure you check it out. It's called Your First Mortgage. There's a lot of opportunities around it. Typically, we hear, actually, I was just talking with a customer, and they were talking about that they thought, they wanted to buy their first home, and they said, well, we have $10,000 saved. Is that enough to buy a $150,000 home? She's like, well, everybody I talked to is telling me I need 20 to 30% down. And I said, absolutely not. And as a matter of fact, Wells Fargo has a program, again, with a 3% down conventional product. So a lot of opportunities out there. If you are in the home buying market, definitely call 612-940-7335. That's Stephanie Havel. Or just stop in any Wells Fargo location, and we'd be glad to get you some information about that. Or again, I know Jason would probably like a plug if you're thinking about selling a home. There is low inventory. So if you are even considering selling, now is really a great time to consider contacting an agent like Jason or Dawn to get your house on the market. And so I would say kind of with that, Jeff, so I have a little knowledge around a 1031 exchange, but not a lot. So if you wouldn't mind, Jeff Peterson with Commercial Partners, kind of talking, so tell me what exactly is a 1031 exchange and how does that even relate to real estate?
Sure. So what I do is I help people that own properties for investment or for business purposes defer their gains when they sell a property and roll that money into their new next investment or business property. So where a lot of people are dealing with residential transactions that are principal residences that people live in, I'm more in the world of investment properties where people are building wealth and compounding that wealth over time. So apartment buildings, farms, offices, and strip centers, those are the areas that I kind of hang out in.
Okay. So when you say kind of help build wealth, so if I own a rental property right now and thinking about purchasing another rental property, how does that work? Or do I have to sell the one to the next one, or tell me a little bit more about that?
Sure. So if you want to sell a property, maybe you've got a property that, is a little bit more management intensive than you want. Okay. Or is in an area that you don't feel is appreciating as well as other areas. So you want to sell that property, and right now is a good time to be a seller.
Right.
We're coming into a hot spring market, low inventory, like you said. So prices are high. This is a great time for you to get rid of that property that you don't really like as much as you thought you would and roll those proceeds into a new replacement property. So what I do is I work with you to put a clause in your purchase agreement when you're the seller, saying, hey, Stephanie wants to do a 1031 exchange. Everybody's on notice. We're going to have a little extra layer of paperwork that we wouldn't ordinarily have at the closing.
Okay.
And then at the time of closing, rather than you walking out the door with that check in your hand, hooray, I've got the check.
Shopping.
Right. Instead, I'm going to be leaving with the check or having that money actually wired to a separate escrow account specifically for your 1031.
Okay.
Well, let me ask you a question. How do you feel when you leave that room, that closing room, you no longer own the property, and you haven't got your money?
Well, a little uneasy.
Right.
That's could be upwards of $50,000 to $100,000, I would guess. I mean, depending on the rental property.
So here's the thing. When you're working on a 1031 exchange, do you want to work with someone that has no experience, no reputation in the marketplace, or do you want to work with the best with a long track record and has provisions in place to safeguard and protect your money?
Oh, a professional, absolutely. And we talk a lot about that on this show there's a lot of people in all of our industries. I'm sure there's a lot of, so are you technically an accountant then, or what qualifies you to do a 1031 exchange? What is your title?
So my background is I'm a lawyer and I'm an owner of a title insurance company in downtown with 4 other partners called Commercial Partners Title. But my sort of bread and butter, my ancillary business is facilitating 1031 exchanges. And the name of our exchange company is Commercial Partners Exchange Company, also goes by CPEC.
Okay. So who could do a 1031 exchange? So not offense to you, but if somebody wants to, would I contact my accountant? Would I have to contact an attorney? Or who actually is it an accountant or an attorney that facilitates a 1031?
That's a really good question. So who can be your qualified intermediary
Other
or
than
facilitator?
You. Right.
And it can't be your accountant or your attorney or anyone that's been your employee for the last 2 years, because the idea is that this person that's holding your money and facilitating the exchange has to be a neutral person that's unbeholden to you. So they can't be your blood relative or your employee. They have to be someone that's sort of independent. And that's where we kind of come in, is where do you find a safe, experienced, and knowledgeable person to act as this sort of fiduciary?
Right.
But they can't have had any interactions with you in the past as your agent or employee.
Well, and I think we've learned that through real estate and as well as mortgage. And, it's all in the news how important it is to have a professional and somebody. I mean, that's where, I feel proud. Wells Fargo's the number 1 lender in the nation. We're very compliant. We work to get it right. Jason and Dawn, have to do hours of continuing education. They've been in the business for a long time. So I agree with you. It's important to have a resource and somebody that does it day in and day out, that knows what they're talking about, knows those nuances because I'm sure it's not just a cut and dry process, right? It's not like, 1031 exchange, simple 1, 2, 3, and we're done, right?
I wish it was that case, but it's not. It's every deal has hair on it. Every deal has to be looked at very carefully to avoid some of those traps and pitfalls that people don't know, because you just don't know what you don't know.
Right. Now, so again, too, my wheels kind of start spinning here. So is there a time frame? So I've sold my investment property, you're holding my 1031 exchange money. Does it just sit like in an interest-bearing account? Can I let it sit there, or do I have to reinvest that money into something else in a specific amount of time, or do I have to reinvest it back into real estate since it came from real estate? Excellent
questions, and a lot of questions there.
Right.
So it goes into a separate bank account, an escrow bank account. Typically, it's in either a non-interest-bearing account or a very, very low interest-bearing account, because these escrow accounts don't typically pay a whole lot of interest, at least in today's marketplace right now. So you want to get that money redeployed as quick as possible, not only for business purposes, but for tax purposes, because under the 1031 rules, you have to identify your replacement properties in writing within 45 days after the date of the closing of your old property.
Okay.
But then you have to close on and acquire those properties, and that's your exchange period, which is 180 days, that also runs from the day after the closing of your relinquished property. So you're kind of like running around like a chicken with your head cut off there, trying to identify and close on some properties.
Okay, so the key then really is, like you said, so identify. So if I am going to sell, I really kind of have to have another property identified. However, then I do have time to, negotiate and close on that property and still not have that. So what would happen? I mean, is there tax consequences? What if I just can't find anything and I can't reinvest? What happens?
We say in that situation that you are SOL.
Okay.
Statutorily out of luck.
Okay.
Because you didn't get your replacement properties, identified or purchased within the 45 days. But if you will, the biggest advantage that you have is to use all of the time before the sale of your relinquished property and work with awesome professionals that are going to be teeing up replacement properties for you so that you have probably at least one first choice property to identify and then a plan B, a backup property or two, because under the identification rules, you're allowed to identify up to 3 properties under the 3-property rule, which is the easiest rule to identify under. So why not take 2 or 3 slots and identify a bunch of properties so that you have the most and highest chance of succeeding?
Right. Well, and I think, we've talked a lot about, too, that's where I think it comes down to preparation. And I'm giving all these plugs for Jason and Dawn. They're not even here, but because they're awesome agents. But, get them, make them work for their money, right? So if you want to do this, if you're interested in looking at it, doing the 1031 exchange of properties, make sure you have a realtor that is out there looking for you. So letting them know that, hey, I'm looking to not only sell this property, but I need you to get moving and finding me some other ones, whether it's 1, 2, or 3, and like you said, probably, I need you to find me 3 because, again, as we've talked about week after week here, with the low inventory and multiple offers, sometimes people don't always want to sell their home to an investor. They might, that might be their family home, or maybe they just like the young couple that's looking and they don't want an investor to, my brother actually had that situation. He sold his home. He thought his home he had lived in for 28 years and raised his kids. And he thought, oh, here comes in this nice young single guy, going to buy the house. The neighbors were all excited. And lo and behold, he re-gutted everything, ripped the house out, everything my brother had done to fix up the house, from the paint, the carpet, everything. The guy came in and totally re-gutted it. And it was kind of like, so I just think, as far as like an investor, like you're saying, having properties, not only having one, but being able to have a couple of other ones identified because, I guess had my brother known, he might not have sold the home to that investor or flipper because that's not really what, it was a nice little home cul-de-sac in Little Canada, Minnesota, really not an area for, where people wanted renters or investments and things like that. But so great. Well, good information, Jeff. We'll continue to talk. And I have a little bit more information, too, that I'll share about Wells Fargo's Your First Mortgage program. So I'm Stephanie Havel with Wells Fargo Home Mortgage. You can find me at stephaniehavel.com or 612-940-7335. We'll be back in a moment with Jeff Peterson with Commercial Partners.